All right, you're just getting John and I. I'm here in my beautiful home studio / green screen setup that I like to just pretend to look at the background of. John from an undisclosed location deep in his underground bunker or possibly submarine or possibly low orbit space station, completely unknown. And we're going to start with what everybody's talking about, Twitter. Some huge news about Twitter cooperating with the Pentagon to spread propaganda around the world. Fun stuff. Today's Not So Critical update. Okay, so now we have to say, I'm going to record this part and say that at the beginning of the episode, we hinted at the story about the Pentagon having a backdoor into Twitter. We spent some time talking about the Musk's clownish polls. If you want to skip that part and check out the discussion about what the Pentagon has been doing with Twitter, that is totally shady. I'll put a bookmark on the video. You can click ahead to that. Otherwise, enjoy the whole thing. All right, back to the show. John, you had identified some of the fun Twitter articles, and I think the last week had been dominated by Elon's clownish polls, which apparently is the new content policy at Twitter. Kind of, but not really.
So regarding the bans of journalists, basically it's like a whole saga, and I feel like every week there's a new one to talk about. But so I don't think Elon, first off, let's talk about the fact that Elon doesn't know what doxing is. He's using doxing as the wrong, I guess, term. So, but let's talk about what's happening. Musk Jet is a kid who was tracking Elon Musk's private jet, and basically it was like fairly automated. There was a Twitter account and an Instagram account and a couple others like social media accounts of his that just tracked the whereabouts and where Elon was going on his private jet.
Publicly available information.
This is publicly available information.
Protected explicitly by the First Amendment.
Yeah, this is like not a big deal at all. And Elon offered this kid $5,000 to shut the account down.
Years ago.
And the kid was like, no.
And he was not an Elon troll. He was an Elon fan. He was doing this because he thought it was interesting to see where Elon was traveling to do business deals or whatever billionaires do.
So fast forward December of 2022, Elon owns Twitter, and this kid is still doing this. And at first, Elon said that he's not going to ban the kid. And then they banned him.
This account explicitly, he said he was not going to ban it. He made a point to say, even this account, I will not ban it because I am a free speech absolutist.
Well, I guess not, because they banned the account, and then he went on this whole like rant about that he's being doxxed and this is a threat against him. Yep. This is a like an assassination plot could occur because they know where he landed. Not the case. Not what doxing means. For those of you that don't know what doxing is the act of sharing someone's address online and abusing that. So I could say that an example of doxing is like Mike lives on Example Street 23, in Example City. Sorry. That's pretty much doxing, and then you publish that somewhere on the web, and people can abuse that, swatting and whatever. So me knowing where your private jet is not doxing, right? Like and you're a billionaire. So like people are going to talk about where you are and what you do, your personality.
So let's go through the evolution of the polls then leading up to how he's handling this situation.
Whoa. Don't forget. Wait, we're missing a huge point here, which is that journalists started talking about this whole banning
absolutely.
Elon thing. Or banning Elon Jet, and they got banned.
For either linking to the Elon Jet page behind the account, talking about it.
Talking about this.
Or one Matt Bender was doing research on the incident that kind of seems to have triggered all this, which is Musk's kid getting stalked in a car and pulled over. And Matt Bender did some reporting that said there was no police report for it. There's no evidence that this actually happened. Not saying that it didn't, just that there's no proof that it happened.
Right. So they got banned. These journalists got banned. And then the funniest thing ever happened.
The polls.
No, we're not even there yet.
Why am I keep trying to jump ahead?
Wait, I don't know if you heard about this. So
maybe not.
There's something called Twitter Spaces, which is like a place where you can
talk. Okay, got it. Yes.
And these journalists whose accounts were banned were somehow, there was a bug in Twitter. They were somehow still able to log into the banned accounts and join these Twitter Spaces where you can talk to
teleconference with Elon.
Exactly. But originally it was between themselves.
For a moment.
They're talking, and then Elon joins this Twitter Space out of the blue on his account, and they're like asking him questions, pretty good questions, like why are we
totally legitimate?
Banned? Yeah. And Elon kept replying the same thing, which was you dox someone, you get banned. And it's like, no one's doxed you, and we're not talking about doxing here. And he couldn't answer it, and then he just doesn't say anything and leaves. So it doesn't even end there. It's actually comedy.
Yeah, it's bad.
It doesn't end there. Elon can't figure out how to disable this Twitter Space where they're chilling and talking. So they remove the entire feature from Twitter.
That's crazy.
Then,
Such a clown.
Elon comes out with a poll.
Yeah. Oh, do I get to go through the polls now?
Yeah.
So we're going to have to make a decision because we're now 6.5, almost 7 minutes in, and we haven't even gotten to the big story, which is what came out today with the Pentagon. So I'm just going to go through these quickly. In terms of the evolution of his polls, his first big poll was, should Donald Trump be unbanned, reinstated on Twitter? And he comes back, all the bots voted yes or no. And he comes back and reinstates Twitter saying, Vox Populi, Vox Dei. So say the people, so say God. Setting the precedent that these polls will be respected on Twitter because that's how Musk works. Kind of following on from his poll about should I sell 10 billion shares to pay my taxes or whatever, a ridiculous thing that he did. So following everything John just set up, he set out the first poll that said, when should unsuspend the accounts who doxed my exact location in real time? Again, not at all what actually happened. 4 choices now, tomorrow, 7 days longer. Now, didn't get more than half, but it got the plurality of votes. And according to Elon's established precedent, these people should have been unbanned now. However, he felt like he offered too many options, so he redid the poll with only 2 options. Now we're in 7 days. Now won even more decisively. And then he still hadn't immediately unbanned people, but I think he did, has since then. They've all been reinstated. But then the icing on the cake was his final poll. Should I step down as head of Twitter? Of course. Yes, you should immediately.
So the obvious answer is yes. Right. But what I love now is that Elon he cannot handle not being in control to the point where he says, I will resign as CEO as soon as I find someone foolish enough to take the job.
Yeah.
But I will retain owner of what was it?
The servers and software and servers teams.
Software.
Yeah.
Software and server teams. What other teams are there at Twitter?
Dude is an absolute clown.
Ads, and like that's it. Like you just described basically the entire stack over there. So
absolute clown.
So funny. Anyway, let's talk about the decision to make. I think we can keep it going. It is important.
Yeah. Okay. So this is, I think, what we introduced. This just, I think, is breaking not long ago, today or maybe late yesterday. Season 8 of the Twitter Files came out, and it was done by Lee Fang, who was interviewed on Breaking Points by Ryan Grimm and Emily Jashinsky. I'm going to play a couple sections out of the video where he's talking about what he found in these Twitter files. The first thing we'll open with is just what did Lee Fang find when he was brought into the Twitter vault? What was the beginning of his investigation?
Psychological influence operations, their efforts on social media, creating news portals, memes, fake personalities.
I think I started a second after. Let me just start at the beginning of that. And I think I'll run this at 1.5 speed.
Pentagon's psychological influence operations, their efforts on social media, creating news portals, memes, fake personalities throughout the Middle East and all over the world to shape public opinion around U.S. adversaries, kind of pushing fake news or certain narratives that demonize Iran.
Which obviously the Pentagon is doing that. That can't be any surprise to anyone.
Russia, other enemies of the U.S. military. And the story also looks at the kind of hypocritical promises and pledges by Twitter. Twitter, since 2016, has promised to crack.
Again, totally unsurprising. Obviously, they're hypocrites. They were then, they are now. And note, he said this has been going on known since 2017. So for all the people outraged over the suppression of Hunter Biden's revenge porn dick pics, I'm sure we'll have equal amounts of outrage over this. I'll hold my breath for that. We'll let Lee continue.
Crackdown on state-backed influence operations to shut down covert propaganda, and they brag all the time about shutting down Russian or Venezuelan or even Thai secret Twitter accounts that are run by the military. Azerbaijan, Azeris are always doing this as well. Yeah. But really the US is doing this. And Twitter, even though they promised to shut down all state-backed influence operations, they've worked hand in glove with the US military, giving them special privileges for their fake Twitter accounts, these fake personalities that kind of make organic-looking conversations in Yemen or Syria or Iraq, promoting US narratives in the region, and working with them and Twitter is well aware of what was going on. And did not shut these accounts down for many years. Some of them were suspended earlier this year, but this has gone on for 3, 4, 5 years.
And one thing,
so Twitter working hand in glove with the Pentagon to hide and support these propaganda programs, largely against other countries, but not exclusively, as we'll also hear about.
It definitely feels like, am I shocked? No. Is it bad that we have some meat on this bone and like a confirmation that this is happening? Sure, this is very bad. But it also just feels like, at least for me, I am fully aware that the United States government and the United States intelligence agencies are running these types of PSYOPs campaigns across all social medias. Because all the other governments are doing it, right? So it's not like this is just them, I guess, keeping the field level, if you will. And I bet you it works. I wouldn't be surprised to hear that this totally works in certain countries.
Good segue to our next clip. Let's listen to him talk about how effective these have been.
These accounts in this particular list, there were several lists of Pentagon accounts that were sent to Twitter, but and some of those were never identified as CENTCOM control, but some were. And after receiving the whitelist privileges, you can see through the Wayback Machine and other archives that these Twitter accounts started shedding their disclosure. Originally they kind of operated under these rules of public disclosure. This account is controlled by CENTCOM. It's based in Florida. But then over time, you see these bios change. They get deleted and changed to Euphrates Pulse. This is just an unbiased account for Iraqis and Arabs.
So what he's saying there is these weren't blue checked accounts. These were just standard Twitter accounts. And what actually happened was the Pentagon sent a request with a list of accounts to Twitter and said, we want these accounts to be whitelisted, which Twitter did. Yes, cool, we're in. Have at it. So these accounts, because they were whitelisted with a flag that had, according to the reporting, never been used before at Twitter, allowed them to bypass all the checks for content filtering, a lot of that normal accounts would go through. And they also, what he was just saying here is there was according to the terms of service, they had to have a disclaimer on the profile that said they were an official government account. And after they got whitelisted, they started removing that disclaimer from their accounts.
Several other types of bios, and the location is cleaned. And then for some of them, they actually used deep fake images using artificial intelligence to create fake images of people that don't exist but look very realistic, and then slapping.
But we're not trying to do anything shady. We're just doing everything super, super shady.
Yeah.
That in as the kind of face of the profile.
Did you get the sense that the psyops, as you refer to them accurately, were directed at shifting public opinion in America, in the West more broadly, or globally? What's the sort of thrust?
So here, we're going to talk about how effective this has been.
What is the Pentagon doing with most of the communications you found? You mentioned Yemen on Twitter. I think that was particularly interesting. What was their goal?
It looks like they were mostly focused on shifting public opinion in the regions where they were targeted. But
Mostly.
This is the internet. For information that might be released with a targeted audience or demographic, it can then trickle into other markets and come back to influence in the U.S. Actually, first looking up the archives of some of these tweets, I noticed that a lot of American outlets, when they needed to learn about information regarding drone strikes in Yemen or in Syria, they didn't have much local reporting. They had to reference these Twitter accounts because they were on the scene, kind of celebrating U.S. drone strikes or other military actions. And for U.S. reporters trying to understand what's going on in the region, they might not have a person on the ground. The only place to reference are these Twitter accounts that look like authentic locals talking about these drone strikes. So it does trickle back.
Wow.
Crazy. So they create this circle of we're pushing propaganda into these countries to build the image of the U.S. in those countries, and then U.S. news outlets see that this account that appears to be local to that area talking about how great the drone strikes are, and then reports that they love the drone strikes. This is crazy.
That is absolutely insane. But like, changing public perception, that's what it takes, right?
Yep.
It's we're all kind of, we can be very easily herded. And when you see 10, 20, 30 people talking online about the drone strike that just occurred a few blocks from you, and everyone's like, go America, that might sway you to be like, oh, maybe it's not that bad. Only 3 people died, like 3 civilians only. So, wow, like that is insane.
And this is the classic people are saying self-referential evidence. Somebody goes out and says the election is rigged. And then on TV, you hear, well, people are saying the election is rigged. Yeah, you just said it. And then it gets reported as, all these people don't trust this. Like, they don't trust it because you said it. And then it just kind of snowballs out of control from there until it's now just conventional wisdom that like, oh, yeah, everybody thinks this, without ever having an original source other than somebody saying people are thinking this.
Somebody said it.
Crazy, crazy. All right. So the other dynamic that happened here is that this happened just out in the open. The first instance that was reported on this was back in 2017. So presumably this program had been going on well before the Trump administration and is just coming out now, probably has continued until very recently, if it's even stopped now. But the interesting they talk about here is whether they knew what they were doing was wrong or not. So let's get to that bit.
What's going on, but there's a few interesting dynamics here. One, Twitter, again, promises to invest so many resources into quickly identifying these Twitter accounts, state-backed influence operations, and shutting them down. Here they are saying, hey, we shouldn't shut them down too quickly because then people might know what the U.S. government is doing. Let's work carefully with the DoD to make sure we don't shut these down in a way that lets maybe foreign governments or the public or the reporters know that this was going on. So they're helping kind of manage the secrecy of this campaign, or at least do provide some kind of service.
Oh, awesome, right?
Wow.
Now, unasked, Twitter is assisting with this effort.
Assisting. Is initiating assistance. Let's reach out to the DoD and ask what's the best way to ramp these accounts down.
Yeah, awesome, right?
To the Pentagon. And the other kind of larger issue here is that they were aware of this. This email shows that they were aware of this covert network. maybe they did recognize that these accounts did violate their terms of service, but this is in mid 2020. If you look at the history of these accounts that they're referencing, they keep tweeting. The next year, they're still around. The following year, they're still around. So, they're clearly aware of what's going on. We don't know exactly what happened in these classified meetings. We know they met with Chris Miller, who was a Pentagon official with the Trump administration, and some other.
Yeah. Crazy. And maybe in the next segment, he talks about how all these emails started just normal email, but then over time they started classifying them because they realized that they didn't. I think this is actually what he talks about in the next segment. So let me play this clip. And also Twitter continuing to help cover, and that the program was bigger than even the Pentagon admitted to in the first place.
One is this list that you guys sent us, and then they're saying, "Hey, wait, here's a much longer list of another 150 accounts that we identified that are probably you guys." Like, what's going on here? So,
Twitter saying to the Pentagon,
to be perfectly fair to Twitter, it looks like at least some of these Twitter, perhaps lower level lobbyists and engineers who are working with the Pentagon on this, maybe they were deceived too because they thought that this was something a little bit more above board. And there's a lot of kind of figuring this thing out. But it's clear from some of the emails that Ryan just mentioned at very top levels, the high level lawyers and executives, they knew this was covert. They knew this was violating the terms of service. They knew that this was highly secretive.
And one of the messages was like, it was like, "Hey, FYI, Pentagon."
Yeah. So super sus. I mean, not even sus, straight up, like out in the open, blatant.
Yeah.
Like, this is what we're doing, so suck it. Like, what
it's always a meme on like forums that are talking about anything bad, like that the feds would be interested in. There'll always be like one comment that seems a bit sus, and it's like, yeah, haha, where do you get enriched uranium, you guys? And like everyone's like, wave to the FBI, and like, sure, some of it is funny, but then other comments, you're like, that is so suspect. You are acting so suspect to like try to get along with the fellow kids, like. Yeah. And then we find out that really they have just been doing this. Like, this is just
straight up propaganda.
Sure. And this is nothing new. I think that the new part is how strongly Twitter was involved and aware. They keep talking about that it's breaking terms of service. I don't care. Like, that is not important to me. What's important is the fact that Twitter went out and said, hey, how can we effectively protect you guys?
Yeah.
And I think if we look at it, Twitter is an internationally serving company. They are US based, so I would assume you have a bias to assist US, government wants and needs. But this feels a little bit scummy, like AT&T level scummy, where AT&T, who was it they let? I think it was the NSA. They just let him plug straight into a backbone and listen to all phone calls and text messages for years.
I mean, to that point, though, we still kind of don't know even with Twitter. They've been testifying in front of Congress and saying all along that they are stopping all governments from doing this. We now have found out that they've been allowing the U.S. government to do it. But is that the only government that they've been allowing to do it? I mean, that's purely speculative on my part. I have no reason to think that's the case, but it's possible.
But it does. But it opens that question up: that are they also doing this for United States adversaries? And the answer is possibly. You really can't know. I would assume not, right? Like, the assumption here is that they're U.S. based, they're U.S. sided, and that's where it ends. But who's to say that they aren't doing this in the UK, who's also a surveillance powerhouse? Very interesting.
It is
definitely
super
big
story.
deal.
For sure.
A huge story.
And I hope that the people who have been breathlessly ranting for the past 2 or 3 weeks since the first round about how the Biden administration, that wasn't actually administration, really was a campaign, has this backdoor pipeline into Twitter for content, has the same level of outrage when it comes to the Pentagon having a backdoor into Twitter for content, and what appears to be a devastatingly bad case globally. This is super bad. I mean, partisanship aside, like whether they do or not, this is super, super bad. So we will be following the story. I think it just broke. We'll get this episode up tomorrow and continue to follow it. I'm sure it'll continue to generate headlines.